The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome to the Book Club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood. Now today, I know I've been away for a bit actually. I haven't done a live show for a couple of weeks, so please do forgive me. But I'm really excited to be back on air and discussing a really lovely book, which is called Prayers of the Pious. And this is written, or compiled or written, I guess, by Dr Omar Suliman. So I'll start by reading the blurb, and then I'm going to introduce you to our lovely guest as well. So the blurb for Prayers of the Pious is: this inspirational collection of prayers and reminders is the perfect companion for anyone who wishes to connect to the divine. Sheikh Omar Suliman provides us with 30 short prayers taken from the teachings of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and the early generations, each with a short reminder to deepen the impact of the prayer in our lives. Prayers of the Pious provide spiritual gems that serve as valuable wisdom and practical advice for the soul. By reading the short work with an attentive heart, the reader can cultivate love for God and his messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and live life with gratitude and contentment. So that's a really beautiful blurb to a very beautiful book. And I've had this book, I'd say only for about maybe a year. I think I purchased it last Ramadan, and that was because I'd heard from many people it's an excellent book. It's something that they always keep with them and they dip into. And I think it really sounded like it's made like a huge impact and difference in to people's lives. So, you know, I bought it, and definitely I think it's become one of my favorite books. And and it really did help me actually in Ramadan as well, for sure. So that's what we're going to be discussing today. And my lovely guest this morning is somebody you probably will have heard of on the live on Friday morning. So we are joined by Neelum Mughal. Assalamu alaikum, Neelum.
Alaikum salam.
Thank you so much for joining me this morning. It's a good excuse really, just to be able to speak to you.
Yeah, well, it's nice having a catch up with you as well this morning. So thank you for having me on.
No. I'm really looking forward to discussion. So maybe we could start with just I don't know. You obviously, I assume, have a copy of the book. What were your first impressions of it?
Like yourself, Imrana, I bought the book probably the Ramadan before yourself, with the intention, because it has 30 prayers, to read one a day. So I was going to try and read one a day and share it with the children and read it to the family and try and analyze each prayer for each day as well. So that was my thoughts behind buying the book. But the actual book itself, I don't know about you, Sib, I really love the cover. I think the way the book's been designed is just, it's not much colour to it, but just at the front where the way the tree is designed, because I think when I think about dua and prayer in itself, I always associate myself sitting in the night and supplicating in the night, and looking at this book, it links it to the night sky and us raising our hands above, and it just feels really significant to the way what the book's going to be about. I don't think it really needs much more detail on the cover. I don't know, would you agree?
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, you know, sometimes the most simplest of illustrations in books have the greatest impact. And so obviously for listeners, basically what you can see is that there's a dark blue cover, and there's a tree, but the leaves are kind of in silver, almost like foil type when you look at it, but they look like the leaves are kind of floating up into just above, you know. For me anyway, they look like they're floating, but I think, coming back to what Neelum is saying, I think that there is this kind of idea that when you do your dua, it's kind of almost being carried carried, to Allah. There's obviously, I mean, I don't know for sure, but I think there is some hadith about angels and them taking dua up to Allah as well, something like that. So it kind of just, it feels like that. And what you said about almost the night sky, and I think what's really wonderful about it being almost that single color, but the slight pink, that could be either dawn or dusk, depending if so just within that, it's covered. It could be any time of the day or night, which is really, really beautiful. So I agree with what you said. So, all right. So like we said, so it's obviously a compilation of 30 different prayers and du'as, and, you were sharing that, you try to read obviously during Ramadan one a day, which is, such a lovely idea. And I suspect that might be one of the reasons that that there are 30, because, Imam Omar Suliman have almost kind of made it for that reason. So when you read, there's a little introduction. I'm not going to read all of it, but there is a part here. So it says in the introduction that Imam Ahmed, may Allah be pleased with him, was once asked, "What is the distance between us and the throne of God?" "A pious prayer from a pure heart," was his reply, "and that's how we connect to Allah. Glorified and exalted is He." When we look at the prophetic prescriptions of prayers, the best prayers and the best supplications are the ones taught to us by the Quran, by the divine revelation, and by the Prophet, peace be upon him, who encouraged the people around him to learn to call upon Allah in a personal way. And then it just goes on to explain that the book is actually based on a series that Imam Omar Suliman delivered during Ramadan 2018. Now, obviously, Imam Omar Suliman is the founder of Yaqeen Institute, and they do obviously many different courses, and there's so much that they do, even though it's based in the US. Obviously, there's kind of like a global, I guess, following definitely of his work. So how about we, do you want to maybe share some of your du'as from the book? Should we go into that?
I can do, but I just wanted to touch on the whole concept of prayer, if I can, because one thing this book, reading, I mean, as guilty as I am with many of the books that I start and never finish, this is one of them as well. So this is added to the list as well, where I did have the good intention of completing it, but I think I got midway and then we stopped, and then I put it away, just like my other books. But one of the things that really stood out to me was the genuineness and sincerity in the pious people that he mentions in the book of when they pray. So, I mean, from my own experience, only when we face a hardship or a difficulty do we stop in everything that we do. And I feel I become very sincere and genuine in my prayer, and it's almost like a request from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that, please take us out of this hardship or bring us on ease. And so it's what I really liked was that they felt like every day was a hardship, because they didn't look at this world as this is our life and making daily prayers for solely just this world. It was for the hereafter, and it was clean my heart, clean my soul, make my life in the hereafter easier. And they were all making prayers for the hereafter, and I just thought that was lovely, because they didn't face a hardship. I feel that whenever I'm in a difficult moment, I will sit down and I, because I'm in need then, and we're in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so you will ask in a different way when you make that prayer. Whereas if you were just making a prayer, at the end of your salah, we just make it out of routine. But when you are in a hardship and you're facing that trial or difficulty, it's almost like your du'as become very sincere, and it's like that throughout this book with the prayers that they make.
Yeah, and it's such an important thing that you shared there, actually, because you're right. It's so, I guess, anything which is part of our commands and obligations to Allah, there's that risk of, because it's a ritual, it will just become ritualistic and almost, like you said, it's just out of habit. I'm definitely, guilty of that too. So whether it's just rushing my du'a, I've never got up from the prayer mat and not done du'a, but how much of it is, am I really present, especially if I've still got dinner to cook or, and all these things. And you're right. I think that importance of just being really present and I think we'll maybe touch upon it later, but I know many people have almost like a dua list, but again, there's still that risk, isn't there? You can have a list, but it's about being really sincere, when you're asking Allah, definitely. I mean, I know, for example, my granddad's my dada, when he passed away many years ago, but even so, while he was still alive, I remember we were talking about death and dying, and he said to me, look, I want you to always remember me in your du'as, like, please, like, after I'm gone. And sometimes that's just it. I'll be rushing, and I think actually I feel like it's an amana. Like, I want relatives who have passed away, but especially maybe our grandparents and parents, etc., whatever it might be. I guess just to take the time out, and I guess that just those sincere few words can make a huge difference. So no, thank you for sharing that.
No, I mean, I don't know about yourself, Imrana, but I feel, and it's probably the generation I grew up in, and the way the Quran was taught to me. But I always felt, because I think another reason I bought this book was because I really struggle making dua. Like, I really, the dua is something. I always grew up thinking I need to recite an ayah from the Quran. I need to memorize this surah and say that and understand what I'm asking for and saying. And it's only as I've got older and had kids that I realized that actually, and especially reading this book, that your dua doesn't have, I mean, it's lovely, it's really good, if you have recited the Quran and understood what you are reading and reciting an ayah in your dua. It's lovely to be able to do that, but you don't have to, because as a busy mum, we're so guilty of just like when we read our salah, we just quickly get up and just read the basics. Okay, I've just got to, my routine is I've got to read this and then just get up and get on. But actually, it's your moment to take that time out, and it's just words. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala understands every language, and so when we make a dua, it doesn't have to be an ayah from the Quran, or it doesn't have to be a surah that we've memorized. It can just be us simply asking in our own words for something. I mean, my daughter's just turned 10, and I'm getting her to really understand how to pray salah. So reading the salah and just the opening surah Fatiha, just to get her to understand the reasoning of, and reading the translation, I was like, wow, even just that simple surah, the power behind that opening of the Quran, just understanding that if we said it in English and did our prayer like that, I think it would have a total different impact on us. And it's made me think, when I'm reading it, that actually really read it word for word, because each word has an impact. And the significance of Surah Fatiha being the opening of the Quran is fantastic as well. So just getting her to understand that, but I had to take that step back to really understand. And it's only when you're explaining it to a child you realize that actually it's quite simple, but we really overcomplex things by saying, even like when someone says do dhikr, you're like, okay, do dhikr, but what shall I read? What's the best thing to read? But just say Allah's name, read Allah's name. The significance behind that is powerful as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so I mean, even what you said again, maybe just come back to the introduction, and it says in here, if you think about what a personal dua looks like, the word in Arabic is munajjad, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but basically it means intimate conversation. And then it goes on to say that Allah doesn't care if it rhymes or how it sounds, or even in what language you call out to him. It doesn't matter. What's important is how sincere it is. And you're absolutely right, it's true that we do sometimes get bogged down on what we're saying and how we're saying it, but actually it's just those the sincerity in the words that you're saying. So yeah, no, absolutely. So then the book, so we're discussing today, is Prayers of the Pious by Imam Omar Suliman, and it's a compilation of 30 du'as and reminders. Obviously we talked a little bit about the cover itself, and even within the book, it's the layout is really lovely, and actually everything's so concise. And at the end of each like du'a, there's obviously a bit of an explanation and context, and then there's page of basically just a red page with like really lovely white writing, just kind of giving a context on what is like a takeaway reminder when you get to the end of each dua, which I think, works really, really well. So maybe we can share some of our ones, favorite ones, or ones that really, kind of really spoke to us. Do you want to start, Neelum, with one?
Yeah, I can start off. I've picked a few, but the first one was number 12. So if you've got the book, so this one is don't make an example out of me. So I mean, I won't read the Arabic. I'll read the English translation if that's okay. Oh Allah, do not make a lesson out of me for others, and do not let there be anyone who benefits more than me from what you have taught me. So my understanding of this prayer is that we should ultimately practice what we preach. So whatever we are sharing our knowledge, whatever we are imparting to others, we should benefit from it the most. And there is something that he says here in page 52, just may Allah, glorified and exalted is he, make us among those who learn and benefit from what is correct, teach others what is correct, and that we will enter Jannah with those who are righteous, not just as people of knowledge, but as worshippers and people who acted upon that knowledge as well. So I really liked that, because I thought that's, it's very true, because you think you've learned something, and you've just got to go and share it with someone and do pass on that knowledge, but are we actually benefiting from that knowledge most ourselves first before we part from that? And I think being a mum, when you know something and you're sharing that with your child and you want to raise them in a certain way, it's really important that we are practicing what we are teaching and preaching to our children, and we're not just saying to them, this is it's quite hard, because it's really, you want them to love the religion, so you don't want them to feel that this is the regiment way of doing things, so you have to, it's like a boot camp, you just have to do this, you have to try and make them understand the love behind why they're doing what they're doing. And I think if you are not solid and comfortable in that yourself, it's going to be very hard to pass on that emotion and feeling to your children and make them feel in that same way.
Yeah.
That was one of them. I don't know if you want me to carry on reading all the ones that I've picked, or if you want to we can share.
Yeah, I mean, we can do maybe one each and then kind of discuss. Should we do it that way? So as it's kind of almost linked a little bit to this one. So there's the one, it's number 19 on page 77, called Make Me Better. So again, I'll read the English translation. So, oh Allah, make me better than how they think of me, and forgive me for what they do not know about me, and do not take me to account for what they say about me. So for a bit of context, Imam Omar Suliman just explains a little bit about this idea again of almost hypocrisy and how that can actually affect any of us, that you outwardly look a certain way, or you're acting a certain way, and people think of you in a certain way, but actually we all do have our faults, and it's very easy, I guess, to outwardly display a certain character behavior, but we don't always necessarily practice that at home when we're not exposed to people outside, for example. And I thought it's such a beautiful reminder, because how many of us will have like that type of ego when we're potentially being praised outside of whether it's friends or just acquaintances, but actually within the home we're daily committing God knows what sins, and there's this idea of Allah, out of his mercy he veils our faults, but more importantly I think just a reminder of acknowledging that is the case. And I remember speaking to my sister recently, and this idea that even when you see good in people, what you're actually seeing is like a manifestation of Allah's attributes. So we know that all good comes from Allah. So if you notice something really kind or gentle or loving in another human being, is actually, you're almost like bearing witness to Allah's attributes. So, and anything other than that is really our own shortcomings. And it's just a way of, I guess, controlling that ego, but also more importantly, being able, similar to what you were saying, being able to practice what you preach, but within even closed spaces and inside.
I like the way you put that down, Imrana, there about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's attributes and the making me, because yes, I think as humans we are continuously fighting with our ego, and especially when I think there's a hadith around you're never fully educated, your knowledge never comes to an end. We're always continuously learning, and we are always going to, I mean, even now as parents, each stage of our life, we are going to acquire a new piece of knowledge, and we are always going to be utilizing that knowledge in some form of way as well, and learning from it. So I think that's really true, because we can get quite complacent and say, no, I've done with my learning. I know what I know now, and I can't take in any more information now or learn anything now, but we can always improve ourselves. And I think my understanding from this prayer is always looking at ways of improving ourselves and not being complacent with the way we are with people, always strive to do the best.
Yeah, and I think it's just important, actually. I was going to mention this dua itself just before we go to the break, was by Sayyidina Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, and we know from his deeds we don't know obviously the amount of deeds he did that no one knows about except him, and again it comes down to that sincerity. And even if someone like Sayyidina Abu Bakr was asking for this prayer, knowing the amazing status that he has in Islam, again, it's just that, it does make you really think about oneself as well. So we are heading to the break. That actually really whizzed by quite quickly. So we are discussing today Prayers of the Pious by Imam Omar Suliman. After the break, we're going to continue the conversation with myself and Neelum. We're going to talk about some more of our favourite du'as from the book. And hopefully, we can just really just go, I guess, and dig a bit more deeper about some of the positive impact that it has. So we'll see you in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum. This is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to Prayers of the Pious. In this situation, you have a group of people surrounding a great scholar in his elderly age and asking him for a dua, asking him for a supplication that he could share. And a lot of times in these personal gatherings, sometimes these personal supplications that are imparted are truly beautiful and contain deep lessons. And the man that we're speaking about today is Yusuf ibn al-Husayn, rahimahullah ta'ala. Yusuf ibn al-Husayn, as he was sitting with a small group of people, someone said to him, "Oh Abu Yaqub," his son's name was Yaqub, as we see these men used to love to name after the prophets. "Oh Abu Yaqub, share with us one of these du'as." So he thought for some time, and then he said, "Allahumma inni nasahtu li khalqika zahiran wa ghashashtu nafsi batinan فَهَبْ لِي غِشِّ نَفْسِي لِنُصْحِي لِخَلْقِكَ." O Allah, I was sincere to your creation in public, but I cheated myself in private. Please excuse my private disgrace because of my sincerity to your creation. He actually died after he shared this dua. So he cried and he passed away after he shared this dua and this wish with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this contains a deep meaning that's not found in any of the other supplications in this series. That many times you'll find an empath, or you'll find someone that has sincerity to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but in the process of being sincere to the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they lose sincerity with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And they lose those private moments of devotion. And they excuse themselves from doing those things because of the great things that they do outside of the house. And that's why you'll find that some of the greatest people in history had the greatest personal flaws, because it's very easy to be fooled into thinking that I'm doing all this great stuff for everyone else, so I don't have to worry about myself in private. I can excuse a little bit of excess in private. And in this situation, you have this man that is calling upon Allah with full acknowledgement and says to Allah, "Oh Allah, I was sincere to your creation in public, but I was disgraceful in private. So I didn't harm anyone, but I harmed myself. So forgive me for that private disgrace because of my sincerity to your creation. It's a beautiful dua because it contains the acknowledgement that I fell short in private, but I want to be forgiven for that. And Allah knows whether his private life actually had anything that was deeply flawed, or if it was simply the high standard that he held himself to. But this is a beautiful way to call upon Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah forgive us for the things that we do in private that harm ourselves because of the good that we do to his creation, and that is certainly beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala also rectify our private and our public lives in a way that is most pleasing to him. Allahumma ameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. Inshallah, see you next time. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Assalamu alaikum. This is the Book Club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood. So you just heard there a clip from Prayers of the Pious by Dr Omar Suliman, which is the book that we're discussing today. The first half, we were discussing some of our favourite du'as, all ones that have had a really kind of, I guess, a big impact on ourselves. So I am joined in the studio, virtual studio, I should say, by assistant Neelum. So how are you, Neelum? How are you doing?
Yeah, assalamu alaikum. I'm good. A bit cold this morning, actually, Imrana. I forgot to mention that bit, how cold I am. But yeah, it's a bit cold.
I mean, the thing is, the sun was literally out. I remember as soon as I introduced the show, I thought, oh, the sun's out. And now it's absolutely completely disappeared, which we should be used to it by now. But I have my winter coat and everything. I haven't yet got to the point where I'm wearing a scarf and gloves, though. Have you?
No, I did think this morning, actually, I think I might need some gloves because I felt no circulation in my hands whatsoever this morning. So I thought gloves, yes. But, it is nearly December now. So I guess, we can't really complain because it's been quite...
Exactly.
Yeah,
it's been all right. It's been pretty mild, actually. We haven't had it, I guess, too bad. So no, I definitely agree with you there. So coming back to today's book, so we're talking about Prayers of the Pious, and that clip we just heard was number 23. The book says, "My sincerity to your creation." Anything in particular that really struck you about this dua, or having listened to that clip? In the honesty, I think it is his honesty, because we're not quite open about when we do something wrong. It's a bit of we'll say I've done wrong, but we're not very openly honest about publicly sitting in a place and saying to somebody that in my own private place, or in just where it's just me and Allah, I have commit sin, or I have done wrong, or I have been unjust, and we're not very open about saying when we're wrong. So I think that's the bit that's really stood out to me there, that he was very honest about and he's quite a pious man again, and so I think that's what really stood out to me there. Yeah, I mean, I remember when reading it, obviously just listening to it as well, the fact that he passed away after making dua, and he cried and passed away. I just can't even get my head around. Yeah. I know we keep coming to this idea of sincerity, but to imagine that the last words and moment that you had in the dunya was to acknowledge that, what you're saying, to actually acknowledge that there's something, there's a fault there, and you're asking for forgiveness, and then to pass away. I mean, the immense, I just don't know. It just, it gives me really goosebumps just thinking about it. And again, I think, that's probably one of the things that you can take away, hopefully, from the show, that place of really speaking from your heart and really digging down deep. And I guess we can't really do that maybe until we're properly pausing. So it's what we were talking about, right at the beginning of the show, that sometimes in that rush and in all of that kind of things that really ritual and it become like a habit, actually to really pause and really think about what we're asking Allah. And then obviously, of course, inshallah, for Allah then just to accept the dua, I guess. So I think that really said something different. And obviously, even Imam Omar Suliman says in it that obviously that's one dua out of all the ones that are compiled in the book, that it's not found in any other, series. And again, it makes you think that of course there must be something really special even within the duas themselves that you can probably look for. But yeah, no, I thought that was really lovely. So do you want to share?
Yeah. So the next one that I picked is number 13, which is a bit similar to what we've been just discussing, really. A station of patience without trial. And it's something that I mentioned earlier on in the show about how throughout the book, the prayers from the pious, they're all genuine and they're sincere in their prayer, and they're not facing a hardship or a difficult moment. And we as humans in today's day and age, we will only become sincere, I feel, when we are facing a hardship or a difficulty. So I'm just going to briefly mention this. I mean, we had COVID as a whole family, and it was quite, sad in the sense that it's COVID and it's scary, and it was a trial that we as a family faced. Alhamdulillah, we had minor symptoms, and we've all recovered really well from it, and were able to move on and continue our life as normal. But it was a moment where, it was a station of patience without trial. This dua really stood out to me at that moment, because it just says at the beginning, the dua in English is, "Oh Allah, if you have granted any righteous servant of yours a station because of a trial they faced, then grant it to me while sparing me that trial." So even within that dua, you're asking for the hardship, but you're also asking for ease at the same time as well, so that don't become the subject of that hardship. And I like the way it says, "Be graceful when Allah tests you, because it might be the case that we can only reach that station of Allah's pleasure by going through that trial and test." So that really resonated with me, because I thought, yes, actually, that's very true. And, we have to take on any hardship that comes, because it's only making us more closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we will then change the way we behave. We will be more sincere in our dua. We will automatically have this closer connection to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because we are facing this hardship. And as I was saying, our duas and prayers become more sincere then, because we are in need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala then. So it all changes.
Yeah, that's right. And it's really interesting because I don't know where I read it or I heard it, but recently, like I was when making dua, it linked to this, the idea that you're right, that hardship, and then to be patient in the hardship, and almost actually have a sense of gratitude, because you're right, it's bringing us closer to Allah. But then this other aspect that, where it says in dua, then, grant it, to grant that kind of high station without, sparing from that trial itself. And, hearing somewhere that, you want to, ideally, you'd like to come to Allah, like through pleasure rather than pain. And obviously that would be, but I guess you're right, sometimes it just doesn't work that way, and we have to go through the hardship, not only to acknowledge and really appreciate times of ease, because obviously if the world, the dunya is not perfect, if everything was perfect and great, we wouldn't actually have anything to be thankful for. Almost it would just be a state of living. So then, alhamdulillah, I think it's a really lovely one that you've picked, I think. And again, this kind of notion of patience, it's it's pretty hard, right? It's really, it's not easy to be patient. And it's really interesting. I used to think I'm a really patient person, and then I got married, then I had children, and I was like, no, actually, I haven't been tested. I really haven't been tested, So it's really funny when you kind of think and I think that there is that, this idea of wisdom coming with age. Obviously, it's not related to numbers. It's the fact that your life experiences, they bring you through so many different type of trials, I guess, and different hardships that you can kind of compare and be thankful for them. So alhamdulillah, I quite like that. Was there anything else you wanted to share on that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. So the other dua that I picked was I've got two more, but I'll jump one. Don't ask Allah for patience, which is on page 81. Now, this one really stood out to me because I love the way Imam Umar Suliman has talked about this hadith, because I read it and a while back from somewhere else, and I just thought it's quite long, so I won't go into the actual dua itself. But basically, the Prophet ﷺ had a practice where they would go around in the mosque and listen to other people that were supplicating and making a prayer or dua. And just that, picturing that, I just thought, can you imagine how beautiful that must have been? And they would go and they would just listen in to what people are asking for, and touch their shoulder, that's a good dua, that's good. And I think they got to the third person, and they heard this person, and this person is saying, oh Allah, grant me patience, which is what we've been talking about. And it's something that we say all the time. Oh Allah, give the family sabr when you've lost someone, or give the sabr is such a big thing, and we're always asking for sabr. And the Prophet ﷺ actually stopped and said to this man that you have now just asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for hardships. So you by asking for patience, you have just, because you are only going to be tested with your patience when you go through the hardship. So instead of asking for sabr and patience, ask for ease. And that has completely, after I read this, it has really changed everything. Even to, when I speak with people that have lost loved ones, I am very conscious of how I say it. And I always say, may Allah grant you ease. May Allah grant you ease, and the family ease. And I've really changed the way I say it, because sabr was something that I used to say so easily. I mean, and even Imam Suliman goes on to say that we should, as Muslims, ask for patience. We should have that attribute within us to have patience and acceptance, and go through trials with ease. As I just mentioned in the previous dua, we should have patience. But in this particular dua, you don't ask for it in this way. You ask for ease, and it just really stood out to me, and I really like that, because it's a bit contradictory to the one that I just mentioned before, where you're asking for patience through this trial, but then you're asking Allah, I'm not asking for patience. So it really stood with me. So I don't know, what do you think, Imrana?
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I hadn't thought about it actually. I think it makes so much sense, because we and I think sometimes we do that. I think that there's this notion of again, it's hadith, or I don't know, it's hadith Qudsi, or maybe it's in the Quran, I'm not sure, but when Allah says that I am as my servant thinks of me, and I think many of us sometimes, I shouldn't say, actually I'm speaking for myself, sometimes you automatically just go to Allah as in that need and despair, and you kind of always wanting to ask forgiveness, but actually reminding ourselves that Allah is full of mercy, and Allah, we can actually, it's okay to say, Allah, actually just give me an easy life, right? Because Allah is in control of everything. Allah is ultimate power, and we should be able to have that hope all the time in Allah's mercy, and in Allah's a bounty that He can grant us whatever we ask for. So if it is asking for ease and not wanting hardship, Allah has the power to do that. And I don't know, I think it's quite powerful just thinking about it.
I know, I think it just the concept of sabr and changing that sabr with ease was the thing that I was trying to get my head around. And I just thought, wow, it's so true, because I think I was mentioning it to you that often, like when people say to us, I'll make dua for me, it's almost become a bit of lip service, isn't it, where you say to them that, oh yeah, make dua for me, make dua, and you just nod saying, yes, I will. And I am guilty of this, I don't, and I'm sorry, I'm going to bring Ertugrul into this, but the Turkish series Ertugrul, it was only from watching that I realized that actually you don't have to be in a state of wudu. don't have to be sitting down at your moment of salah, at the end of your salah, and remember, yes, so and so asked me to make dua for them. When they faced any trial, any good moment, anything that happened that was momentous in that episodes, they stood there and made the dua then and there. And it just made me think, gosh, we don't do that enough. Simple things like, going to the school run and having a close encounter where the car could have, really turned upside down, anything like that. And you coming back and, you're just making that dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Thank you so much for saving us from, a calamity, anything. And it made me really realize that, when somebody now says, make dua for me, I do try my very best to do it then and there and say to them, may Allah, ease your illness, grant you shifa, say it then and there, rather than saying, yes, sure, I'll make that dua for you. And then it just doesn't happen. So I think that's another thing that's really important from this as well, that we learn to not make it lip service and just become, you saying it like that.
Yeah, and I love that you brought ethical into it. So but no, you're right. I think it's just so we box ourselves in, don't we? That we have to say at a certain time, and like you said, maybe we need to be in wudu and have our head covered, and all these things. But actually, that's not Allah's with us all the time, right? We're in Allah's presence, should I say, all the time. It is somewhat, and in any moment, to take and say a prayer and do a dua is really beautiful. That we can have, and that's the beautiful thing about Islam as well, because we are always connected to our Creator, no matter what we're doing and where we are. It's such a lovely feeling, I guess, just to know that no matter what we're going through. So no, for sure, and I just kind of linked to the next one that I was going to talk about, one of the duas in Prayers of the Pious. So this one is number 18, a reminder of my illness. And this, I've had up and down health recently, and I remember reading this and just thinking, oh my goodness, so basically, just to give context, obviously I'll read the translation and a little bit of what the context is. So the dua is, remove the illness, O sustainer of mankind, cure the disease, for you are the one who cures. There is no cure except your cure. Grant me a cure that leaves no illness. So Imam Suliman then gives a context that Awais al-Qarni, may Allah be pleased with him, was the man that the Prophet ﷺ spoke about but never met. He told his companions that if they ever met this man because of his closeness to Allah, that they should ask him to ask Allah to seek forgiveness for them. And he gave a description of Awais. And then it goes on to just explain that on Hajj, Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab tries to search for him and asks him to ask Allah for forgiveness. And basically the status of Awais al-Qarni is for two reasons. So one is that, just trying to find it. So he said that Awais had leprosy, and he asked Allah, glorified and exalted is he, to cure him from the leprosy, except for a piece the size of a coin, a dirham. Awais also was a man who was very generous and would show extreme obedience to his mother, and because of the obedience to his mother, Allah, glorified and exalted is he, honoured him. So then this chapter goes on, but what Imam Suliman does is he focuses on the former part of that explanation about why Awais, when he asked, may Allah be pleased with him, about suffering from leprosy, but to leave a coin-sized piece of leprosy on him. And I just thought, I couldn't, again, it's like, the amazing people and, the pious people that have passed, in our history. Because I know when I'm ill and I'm asking Allah, please, I just can't, alleviate me from this pain or whatever it is, I've never stopped to think that actually just keep a little bit. So I remember that in that pain, I came close to you. I remember in that pain, I was in need of you. I mean, I don't know how many of us would have the, goodness me, there's such high iman to be able to, say, no, I want to keep a little bit of it, just remind you. I don't think, even having read this, it just, I get really, really emotional because I think, subhanAllah, it's just so much to learn from the people of the past that, that they even wanted to keep some of the hardship with them. So yeah, I really want to share that one.
No, that's, I mean, and that's true. I mean, I guess in today's given time, the trials and troubles that we faced with all the lockdowns and COVID and people dying, it's quite relevant really as well, because everyone's we just ask, remove it, take us away from this, get rid of this virus, get rid of this illness, and we're not actually sitting back and thinking, actually, hold on, what has this virus, because I was talking to somebody earlier this week, and she was just saying that God's merciful, so why do we have the virus? And I said, look, we can't question why it's come to us and why it's happened. We should try and see the good that's come out of it. The families that have reconnected, people have changed their jobs because they've realized that actually I'm in a job that I don't like. I want to be with my family. And I just took the kids to the dentist yesterday, and our dentist has changed. And I said, oh, he's left. And they said, yeah, he's decided to become a chef. He just had a career change totally. And I was like, wow, so it all, as well as it being hard and sadly losing all those people that we have lost, there has been some good, and I think we should try and focus on the good that's come out of this and see that that's Allah's mercy and that's Allah's blessings to us all, because we only saw that because of the hardship and the difficult we faced. If we didn't have that, none of this goodness would have come out of it. So I think that I'm conscious of time, Imrana, but I did want to just mention this one last prayer, which is on page 61, and it's number 15, the prayer of a tree. And it's basically talking about being closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when in prostration. And actually, this has really stuck with me because you can just, now when I read my salah, I'm actually reciting the name of Allah, which is Al-Ghafur, which is the one who forgives and the forgiving, the pardoner. So I read that in abundance, and you are in your closest, your communication, you are connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala when you are in salah. But when you are in prostration, you are very close to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when I read and heard that, I thought, wow, and this is something that I thought I need to, really make use of that moment. It's something we took for granted. But when I read that dua, that the prayer of a tree, where it's actually saying that when you're in prostration, you are closest to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at that moment. It's like, ask for anything that you want to ask for in that given moment, and really utilize that moment that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I just wanted to mention that, because that really resonated with me. It just, when he says you are the closest to Allah in your prostration, so when you go into prostration, that's the time to make that special prayer.
Yeah, and that's such a beautiful way to end today's show. And I think it is that thing of just taking those moments. And you can go in prostration again at any time. As soon as you feel that you need Allah, you need that connection, definitely the sujood is a beautiful, beautiful thing that we've been given, I guess, through our faith. So thank you so much, Neelum, for your time this morning and for that beautiful discussion. We were talking about Prayers of the Pious by Dr Omar Suliman. Definitely, purchase this book if you don't already have it. And I will be back, inshallah, next week with a new guest and a new book. But in the meantime, of course, please do keep myself, Neelum, Inspire FM team in your du'as, and we will see you shortly, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.